first. So MP Wescot, you may be speaking first. I'll just turn it from your side when you start to speak, really.
Welcome. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this joint press conference with MPs Peterson, myself, Wescot-Williams, Emmanuel, and Duncan. I just wanted to take some time today to touch on the events of the last few days in the discussion over the draft law being brought to justify the vacation payout that occurred some time ago to civil servants. Following that, we'll discuss a bit about the ongoing GEBE situation, and then moving into, of course, the events of last week Friday, the motion of no confidence against the Minister of Rami, and the still standing Ombudsman's report into her systemic investigation into the garbage collection, awarding, and tendering process. So,
I think we should also touch a bit on the Vineyard Heights as well.
Well, yes, of course. And then other investigations from the Ombudsman that impact that particular ministry and others, as we receive the annual report again in Parliament. So, MP Wescot, if you'd like to start off with the draft law for vacation pay.
Sure, and a good morning, of course, to my colleagues and all tuned in, the members of the media as well. And indeed, as MP Mellissa Gumbs indicated, every so often we see the need to sort of extract ourselves from what is taking place in the meetings of Parliament to be able to, in a very clear manner, present the issues at hand. And as MP Gumbs indicated, there are several of these issues. But before I go into any one of them, and I definitely will go into that matter of the vacation allowance draft proposal that is with Parliament, I think affecting the credibility and the legitimacy of the government today is the fact that we don't know what support there is for the government. So that makes whatever the government presents even more questionable. It should be recalled that in 2019, when many of the actors, now ministers of government, were on the other side, and you had the issue of two members of Parliament rather, leaving the UD. The motion, and that's in Parliament's record, so we could pull that up easily, that particular motion issuing no confidence in the government dealt with, but we don't have any clarity. We don't have any information as to the legitimacy of the government and the credibility of the government. And in that motion, it was stated, amongst other things, that 2 weeks have passed and no clarity was given at the time. We're still in 2019 because there's another trend by many members in Parliament in support of the government, and that can be easily termed whataboutism. And I'll get to that with the vacation allowance draft law as well. But let me stick to the issue of the credibility of the government. So the government was like, 2 weeks have passed and we haven't heard any clarity. The community of St. Martin is a very tolerant community. Why do I say that? The 30th of June, we members of Parliament, and I guess the majority of the population on St. Martin, were able to take note of this document signed off by some members of the current NA-UP coalition and two, I can't even say independent members, the USP member, the USP faction, because that hasn't been taken away, as well as the independent member signing off to basically be part of the government. Not all the existing coalition members signed off to that agreement. The following day, July 1st, the leaders of the NAUP government came out and said what is being done is that they're seeking to expand the coalition. That was the only statement we hear. More than 2 months later, none of these leaders, as they call themselves, of the coalition, think it just and necessary to explain St. Martin where their government is at. In the flux that we are in terms of our political state, it's a sign of weakness because there's nothing that the government can come out, whether you agree with them on it or not, and state this is a firm position, this is a position of the majority in parliament. If the government feels comfortable on the basis of a minority, that's all we can go by now until we hear otherwise, then just say so. Then just say so, and we would know how to continue. But no, rather than that, the government, the members of the ministers and those supporting these ministers are as if it's business as usual. So they come now and they present into Parliament on their terms, amongst other things, this law on nullifying the cut of vacation allowance. That's what this particular law is all about. And trying to make it seem by the members who are questioning the law as presented, as if what is happening by those members is that we're jeopardizing the payment of vacation allowance to the civil servants and public school teachers. Nothing could be further from the truth than that. Yeah. Absolutely not. Vacation allowance was paid out, and that would remain like that. And as one of my colleagues has stated on more than one occasion, I don't think even an attempt would be made to undo that, because then we all will be up in arms. What the government should do is ensure equal treatment, and nothing via the Prime Minister that has been presented on this law explains why and how the government has bungled the law that cuts the salaries and such of all of the others, subsidized school boards and whatever. And so yesterday we got some answers that in essence only brings more questions. And then there is a legality in this law as well. And that the government would try to pull the wool over our faces in terms of the accountability ordinance. And then you have, and again, I'm using a word of one of my colleagues, and then the cheerleaders now, and in particular, the one that is always about, but what about ism? Now we had to hear yesterday about former Minister of Finance Perry Hearings when he got the approval of the loan for the airport. And again, I encourage everyone to check the records of Parliament and check the kind of letter that former Minister of Finance Perry Hearings sent about getting that loan and the need to ensure and get parliamentary approval before it happened. That too is part of the records of Parliament. But I guess that will continue to be the case, and it stays whatever it is. But I think what the government should focus on now is letting the people of St. Martin know what their support is. What is the NAUP government at this time? What do they represent? Because even in better times for that coalition, clearly there were many streams within the coalition. Streams regarding the relationship within the Dutch kingdom, streams regarding, amongst other things, the tax system, and I could go on and on. But again, what I think is very important, in addition to the other issues that are going to be addressed here by my colleague members of Parliament, is the fact, one, that law that the government presented to undo the nullification of vacation allowance has nothing to do with the payment that has already taken place. And this narrative about, yeah, now we are coming to you, Parliament, and we're doing it based on Article 50, like several colleagues and myself yesterday in the meeting, there are two choices to deviate from the stipulation that it is Parliament that approves budgets and finances of government, period. One, an acute situation, and the reference is even made to conditions of war and the like. War and disaster. And secondly, if a completely unforeseen and urgent matter came up during the year that could not have been foreseen when the budget was made. And if the choice is for the latter, then the first thing the government was supposed to do was present Parliament with a financial overview of such a measure. So again, the government and the members of Parliament should be focusing on creating equality. Now that you have undone the cut of the vacation allowance, the government today can't tell us what all of the different organizations, semi-government institutions have done to fulfill the law that was passed already about a 12.5% cut in benefits and salaries, etc. Up to today, yesterday, it couldn't happen. They couldn't tell us. They couldn't tell us what the Seventh-day Adventist School, the MAC, all of them, NEPA, you name it, what they did in order to comply with the law that is on the books, cutting 12.5%. Did these cuts include vacation allowance? Then can these school boards now follow government and undo the cut of vacation allowance and pay out their workers? But that answer we can't get. We hear everything else by the ministers and those in support of the actions of the ministers, except to give a clear answer to that question. And then we see the situation that played out, but
No, I want you to also not to forget the part that you were making reference with the vacation days and the vacation pay. You can't forget that one. And I think I don't know if it was a Freudian slip on behalf of the Prime Minister or the reality as it is, when she said approving this law would legalize the payments that was made. So I don't want you to forget those points.
For sure. And that's very important. And it is important because of the following. The government right now is and has acted illegal. Not only because the law cut the vacation allowance, but also because the conditions that were supposed to be met have not been met. The government has been telling Parliament and the people of St. Martin, it's okay because we have a swap. So we really didn't reduce the 12.5% cut. What we did, we swapped vacation days for vacation allowance. So the vacation allowance that was paid out, but the workers had to give up vacation days, had to give up their vacation. Nowhere in this law is that swap evident. It is not. So right now, that law is in conflict with the conditions that apply to the government of St. Martin. And that's why I said in a recent release that this thing is going to blow up in the faces of the government when it comes to their discussions with the state secretary regarding these conditions and the phasing out of the cuts as applied on the basis of the 12.5%. So that is the reason why members of Parliament are so adamant about this piece of law that is before us, and then to hear other MPs argue about, but the Council of Advice did not say anything about it. The Council of Advice has its role, its responsibility, and the members of Parliament theirs.
But it's not only that. You get other MPs trying to put words in the mouth of the Prime Minister. So then what you got yesterday was the Member of Parliament to the Prime Minister saying, isn't this sort of the first step of phasing out the 12.5%? And the Prime Minister herself was uneasy with the question because she was very careful to say, well, yes, it could be. However, we are looking at it because the Prime Minister knows factually it cannot be so. It simply cannot be so.
Exactly.
But what you get is this, let me feed you the question.
Yeah.
And once I feed you the question, you can sort of formulate it how it is. But the Prime Minister herself said it. She said it yesterday. She said, with the approval of this law, it will legalize
what the government has done.
What the government has done. Mm-hmm. It's not for me as those who say they're doing law school now and went to law school and know the legal jargon and terms to put that in perspective. But if you are saying, listen, I'm coming to Parliament, I need you to approve this, I need you to pass this, because this would legalize the payments that was done by the government, then it means the payments was done illegally. And that's the question I asked the Prime Minister.
It also says a lot about the communication between the coalition and their partners in the executive branch. And I mean, I'm not saying we as MPs should micromanage the Council of Ministers, but there should be some line of communication between us to make sure that we're on the same page, because otherwise, what happened yesterday in Parliament, it was confusing to the Prime Minister as well. And I assume that she would look to her coalition members for support, but now they are trying to put words into her mouth, and it's causing more confusion. More confusion.
Yeah. Just one individual. Yeah, just one.
I think for me, it's also using Article 50 kind of, if every, with this government, I keep saying if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. If everything is an emergency, then there is no differentiation. You understand? If you can simply use that article as a sort of get out of jail free card, you're kind of blurring the lines of what actually constitutes a scenario where Parliament can be bypassed.
Yes,
and I think that for me is the most dangerous precedent that is being set, because it's not a precedent they would have tolerated from previous governments. Yeah. And we historically we can see that it was never tolerated. Even the mention of the airport's loan scenario, shows that it was not something that was tolerated in the past. But the airport being able to function is a matter of national security.
Exactly, and that can be seen, legally as a loss belong. When you look at the harbor, when you look at the airport, those are, the ways to enter and enter the country. Exactly. So, but when you compare that to this, and I'm not prioritizing the salary of the civil servant, don't get me wrong, but to compare those two is to create a very wrong impression, because the law is very clear. As MP Wescott said in the meeting, our budget right as Parliament is arguably the most important constitutional right and actually our obligation as Parliament. So we have to hold government accountable for spending. So if you are going to deviate from that norm, like the law says, it has to be in very, very extreme, specific, situations. And this is not one of them. This is not one of them. And me and MP Wescott were basically, going back and forth throughout the meeting yesterday, personally. And we were saying, but they are saying that the Prime Minister is allowed to decide, etc. But they are not proving none of the conditions that have to be met as per Article 50 to actually say, this counts as an exception. If you read the law, it says, onverwacht opgekomen dringende behoeften. Those are very extreme situations that you're going to have to prove in order to say, listen guys, this happened, this was onverwacht, this was opgekomen, this was urgent, dringend, and therefore we have this situation, and that's why I want to deviate. But you do not execute that decision, and then after the fact, come to us.
And
that makes no sense.
There is in that article a part where once it is determined that you have that urgent, unforeseen need that came up and is not foreseen in the budget, it also states that once that is presented, the Minister of Finance can get the funds, the money from the miscellaneous post on the budget. From the miscellaneous post on the budget. Exactly. And that picture of this is what came up, it's urgent, it was unforeseen, this is what it will cost. And here is where I'm putting it until I get the approval of Parliament to put it where it needs to go, financially speaking.
That's how it's supposed to go.
You know, I listened to MP Wescot in her explanation. I don't want us to simply bypass the legitimacy of this government as it is right now. And I think in terms of layman terms, it should be broken down. Because you have where two members of the National Alliance, because we're talking about a coalition government, where you have the National Alliance and the UP have a majority. So we are not even including the member of parliament representing the USP party right now, and we are not including the independent member from the USP. We are looking at the legitimacy of the government as it is right now. So if you have the National Alliance with 4 seats, because that's what they have, 4 seats in parliament, and you have the UP with 3 seats in parliament, where's the majority?
Yep. And until the government...
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to say that this is an issue that comes up because, of course, me being involved, a new coalition agreement has to be signed and presented, and it has to be legitimized, because indeed, I did not sign the original coalition agreement because I didn't come in when the ministers went in. I came in, I was then a signatory to the original coalition agreement. So a new coalition agreement, if there is a new coalition needs to be presented and legitimized. That needs to happen.
MP Duncan, I can't let your statement go by without placing it in the context of, and it is because of the numbers that the legitimacy, although you did not sign, but because you were a member of the NA, exactly. And now all of that is being torn apart.
Yeah.
And we're going to see even a more peculiar situation. Because, and now let's call the players by name. MP Chanel Brownbill. We saw the document of the 30th of June with his signature. Even if MP Chanel Brownbill does not, when he signs the official accord, put behind it a faction, it is a US, it would be a USP remaining NA, remaining UP.
Yeah.
That is what it will be. And now you have the peculiarness that I refer to is the fact that the party, the USP, has basically put MP Chanel Brownbill out of the party, but MP Brownbill has not declared himself independent. So any document that he signs, especially a coalition agreement, represents the USP.
Yeah.
You know, so again, the legitimacy in terms of even if you had members like MP Duncan who did not sign off to the accord because she came in and the accord was there, but because she was part of the NA, they could count her in their number. And the question is now, who can be counted in the number that supports this government? Anywhere else? I mean, you would have had Parliament, I said this to my colleagues as well, every week testing the government on its legitimacy as a government. But the tolerance that we display here.
No, but it goes back to the motion when MP Franklin Myers pulled his support. And in that motion, it was made mention that, look, listen, as it says, I don't know if you want to read it there, it says...
They take this part here, that the loss of support of the Leona Marlin Romeo II cabinet went on for 2 weeks without a reaction or move on the part of government, creating a serious sense of insecurity among the people of St. Martin as it left the country without a legitimate government. This is, and do you have the signatures?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You can scroll it down to the
signatures. And who do we see amongst others here? We see the Minister Duran, we see the the Prime Minister, Sylvia Jacobson, and that's and several others, Bryson, Mercelina, Brown Bill, and
and myself.
and MP Christopher, MP former and current MP Marlin, former MP Franz Richardson, etc. That statement there, after 2 weeks, I mean, they use the time period. They use a time period of 2 weeks, with 2 months and counting, and the government does not think it necessary to give an explanation to the people of St. Martin. And when we come, and when they then present us something, and we question the legality of what is before us, then they're up in arms.
And go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
So I also wanted to add something, that's a kind of peculiar situation when it comes to the legal side of it as well. Because when you look at a democracy, the legitimacy of a government, it's based on the fact that they have the support of Parliament. Why? Simply for one reason, to pass laws. When a government cannot pass a law, in theory, what we call government dropping, that is what the Constitution states as the confidence withdrawal has been lost. Now, we have a situation where one of the senior MPs, has been absent for almost 7 months. He just came back now. And I wish him Godspeed when it comes to his health. But when we look at Parliament, we have been a 14-man Parliament for the last 6 or 7 months. There is indication that we might be a 14-man Parliament again in the near future. What we are creating right now, seeing the situation that we have an opposition currently of, let's say, 7 members, we are going into a deadlock government.
Yeah.
And it will create a situation where laws at some point might not be passed. And the budget is coming up. Now, that alone, a law not passing, a national ordinance not passing, is an indication that there is no support for the government. So again, here is where it comes into play. The government needs to make it clear who is part of the coalition, because if, God forbid, MP Marlin leaves again, and then we are placed in a deadlock Parliament where everything is going to be 7-7, 7-7, 7-7, then we cannot move as a country, and then then we become ungovernable, and that is against every intention of the
I think you're putting it mild, because you make mention of the senior MP. But what happens now if the prosecutor's office decides that, listen, MP Shannon Brown, you have to come and sit here 6 months. You have to come and sit your time. Then what happens?
You know what's funny, Emmanuel?
What happens?
The seat goes to the next person on the USB list.
That's it.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what does the USB have to say about this?
Yeah.
We are in a very special
I'm serious.
term when it comes to us as MPs, and given that this is my first term, it's crazy to say the least. And this is coming from a purely professional perspective as well. I would have never anticipated it to be this mixed up.
Yeah.
To use nice words.
And I think ending on that note of, from a professional perspective, we can kind of move into the next topic, which is the ongoing situation at GEBE and how it kind of feels like right now.
Who's in charge?
Well, that question that you asked as well yesterday, and who's in charge, is a question that we still need to have answered. But additionally, it seems as though the government is kind of running. I don't know, it just went very strange to me. Coming from private sector, when you have such a situation as what occurred in March, a ransomware attack on GEBE, which is critical infrastructure, the response, I think, is a little more frantic than we have seen from the supervisory board, and which is now down to 2 members, which I think is a violation of their articles even, to be honest. Down to 2 members. The government, the last shareholders meeting was August 19th. Previous to that, it was June 30th. You would think that, as a sort of, that is an emergency response scenario, actually. That it had happened in March, and then you would expect every other week or so you would be getting an update. Right now, we're waiting on answers to questions that we asked, but it seems like GEBE management, interim or whatever, is not actually cooperating, at least from what we hear from the Prime Minister.
But the thing is, who is the management?
Games are being played. When resolutions pop up on the days, when resolutions pop up on the days of deadlines given by government to actually give information, it shows you there's a game being played, people.
Yeah.
GB is in a critical state, not only as a company but internally.
Colleagues, look at the airport situation. it would have gone in exactly the same way if you didn't have a Dutch government component in it. Who at a time when everybody wondering what, who giving instructions to the holding, who giving, and it's only when the Dutch government, because of the whole financing, etc., put down its feet, that situation was salvaged. Had it not, it would have gone down the same road that we're seeing GB going down today.
Yeah. For me, as I've tried to explain in the meetings that we've had, I think that I want people to remain vigilant about the GEB situation. 2 days now, their system has been down, so people cannot be making payments, etc. And then they say it's an upgrade of what I have yet to see, to be honest. I'm hoping that employees were still able to access their relevant systems, whether it's SAP, with the security environment, etc., because those things are critical to getting GEB back on its feet. And to date, I'm still a little curious as to, who is protecting us. We saw that they were not paying the previous company. Are they paying this company? Like, are we going to keep jumping companies, ruining our international reputation, to be honest, by not adhering to our responsibilities when we sign agreements? Because that's the feeling that I'm getting, and also some clarity on the situation with Sol and Wärtsilä.
Yeah, but you're looking to pay. You're looking to have a big party for the 60th anniversary to spend a ton load of money, but your creditors are without money. And your creditors are not being paid. So that's why I asked the question again. Is it Jimmy Timmer in charge? Is it Sharon Daniel in charge? Is it Troy Washington in charge? Is it the Council of Ministers in charge? Is it the Prime Minister in charge? Is it the Minister Duran? Who exactly? What? And those are the answers that you're not getting.
Yeah.
And because you're not getting those answers, it seems to be chaotic.
Yeah.
What we are seeing now in this country is a complete breakdown, and not of the structures, but in leadership and in management, all over the place. Because before GB, tell them employees still crying out.
Yeah.
And it's about how companies are being led. It's ridiculous, and I am tired of people taking companies hostage. Right? You got one manager or maybe a couple managers taking these companies hostage, and that was why I said, okay, wait a minute. We have the GB management who is failing. We have the supervisory board now down to 2 seats.
Yeah.
The shareholder is saying at the beginning of the presentation, we have to stay at the arm's length, or we can't really figure it out. And I asked, okay, what about the regulator? And that is what we are missing. And I hope that government can put in place the necessary legislation to get the regulator, the BTP going, get a framework in place so that we not only have standards, but we have some sort of consumer protection. But it is scary right now that all of our biggest government-owned companies are in some sort of a crisis.
But you had the Prime Minister saying that they're going to put a crisis team together. And I'm saying to myself, okay, you're putting the crisis team together to do what exactly?
Well,
and then you have to, then now they're launching an investigation. What are you launching? What is the investigation for? What are you going after? What are you looking for? Because by launching an investigation, you're saying something is wrong internally. What is it? What? Give us the answers. What is it? And that's where you ask the question, and B. Duncan says, well, it's a lack of leadership across the board, because you hear one thing from the government, or then from the Prime Minister, you hear one thing, and then you see something else happen. So you ask yourself the question again. Jimmy Timmer came off of sick leave, and he's back to work with immediate effect.
He's back on sick leave now. That's what I was informed.
And now he's back on sick leave now, and then you have the supervisory board appointing Shireen, the director, and then no, she's not a director, and then Troy Washington is coming, and he's going to be the CEO and
temporary CEO.
The temporary CEO, and the supervisory board wasn't informed and didn't know about it, and then it is crazy.
Yeah, MP Emmanuel, the fact that at this point in time, 6 months down the line from a ransomware attack, is when the crisis management team is being deployed, that to me was the straw that broke the camel's back, from a professional perspective. But this goes back even further. Last year, we, as a faction, then we asked questions regarding the Corporate Governance Council report on the members proposed to the supervisory board.
Right.
This is why
Where
the
was the
articles
legal?
literally suggest you need a financial expert, a legal expert,
asking,
an
where was the
HR
legal?
expert, a technical expert, and a business/economic expert. And there were 5 persons that satisfied one requirement, which is the business expert. Nothing technical, nobody legal really, which is to me would have been a critical factor in avoiding where we are right now, because a legal individual on the supervisory board would have never allowed Judy to not cooperate with the initial investigation that was coming from the prosecutor, which, as I've said in Parliament, these things are crimes. They are actual crimes,
Yep.
and they must be investigated by the relevant law authority. So it's really, the cat is, it's not even in front of the horse anymore. It's
But
the
you
cat is
see,
rolling down the hill and the horse is chasing after
And
it.
I know we have some very important other topics to get to, but I want to get back to the political state for a moment, because what happened with the government is we all have heard the rumors, the statements, whatever have you, from last week, the meeting that the coalition had. But what happens is that what we're seeing is that this entire situation is also affecting the functioning of Parliament. Because now, in all of this now, the presidency of Parliament is exactly comes into question.
And
we're not sure. And I am the first to admit, right now, and that's the way it has been with me, it has been with others, the presidency of Parliament is part of a coalition understanding.
Yes.
That's the way it is. But when within the coalition itself, the one that is supposed to be right here now, that particular
The faction
function
leader, actually.
is being
The
examined.
faction leader, actually.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So now we're coming in now as members of Parliament because we all have heard it, we all have read, we all have seen, and then you're wondering, is this the meeting where somebody's going to try to pull something on us?
But you can't say if someone, I don't know if you guys read the newspaper this morning. So you made mention that coming with the presidency comes with the coalition. But every Wescot, in that coalition you have an agreement. And in that agreement you have where the UP faction or party will hold on to the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're seeing here is a UP member is encouraging the other members of the coalition, because of a majority, to dispose of another UP member
The
from
actual
the presidency.
faction leader of the UP. And
So you have the
It's really crazy.
you have the faction leader of the UP, or the leader of the UP is telling the majority in the coalition to remove the president, or we have the numbers, and the president of Parliament should be removed. So what you have is a UP
for himself.
removing a UP.
To become it has to be either an ego problem or entitledness to the position, because there is no other explanation. There's nothing.
I mean, I had to bring that in.
It doesn't make sense.
We cannot act oblivious to the political situation, because it affects us, it affects our work,
And it will affect our meetings in the future.
Even more,
The new
exactly.
parliamentary year is starting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So how is it going to go?
So again, the question comes back to the legitimacy of this
Yes.
government.
Yeah.
The legitimacy of this government, because again, remember, MPs, what we saw was sort of a mishap of a so-called coalition agreement.
Yeah.
That was snapped on a phone, and who was in Panama quick to sign, and it just went around.
Yeah.
But in terms of presenting a legal document saying this is the new coalition agreement, these are where is it? Where is it? So yes, you can simply say, oh yeah, the coalition is strengthened by 2 other individuals. Fine. Where is it? Where is it? Because right now,
where have they pledged to be part of the support for government?
We don't know the document is legitimate. We do, like I said, it just went out. So you have the National Alliance with 4 seats in Parliament. You have the UP with 3 seats in Parliament. That's 7. You don't have a majority.
Yeah.
You don't have a majority. And then if we go back to what MP Duncan made mention of, that she didn't sign the old coalition. So then I am assuming they're operating on which coalition agreement? The old coalition agreement, the original one,
with the minister's signatures on
with the minister's signatures on it, or this one. And if they are operating on the one with the minister's signatures on it, then we simply have another problem too as well. Because it means that Hyacinth, Member of Parliament, didn't sign on to it either. But then it means Angelique Remove MP didn't sign on to it either. MP Pandeflet didn't. So which one are you operating on? Which one are you operating on? So it can't be the old one. It can't be the old one. So it got to be this new one. But then in this new one, where is it? Where's the majority? You have a problem. We have a problem.
Yeah. And yeah, it is my hope that considering a new parliamentary year starts within a week, and then we are still awaiting the final answers on the GB situation from the Prime Minister. I'm hoping that there is at least some communication coming out, tomorrow, well, what's it? Tomorrow is their press briefing, so hopefully there might be something shared in there. Someone, I'm assuming, will ask about it, because the ongoing concern is you are still having people pay with no clarity on their bills. I mean, I'm one of those people. There is no clarity on what is owed. I've been calling, told to go in the portal. I go in the portal. It's an old April invoice, and I mean, you're asking people to pay blindly with no kind of communication as to when a reconciliation is going to happen. So for me, it's
liability,
and there are those who can afford to do that, like I said, but there are many others who simply cannot. So it's I think the attitude of blaming the public for the current financial situation is fascinating to me as well.
I mean, we spoke to the Prime Minister yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that she did not agree with how the GB team handled that one. I get the feeling that the Prime Minister also has not been duly informed, or at least timely, when it comes to what's happening.
If we listen to the
but by the end of the day, the responsibility lies with the Council.
Exactly, and if we listen to the timeline, I most definitely get a sentiment that this is I have to come in and clean up the job kind of business, because the timeline highlighted the fact that the only ministers to have meetings with the supervisory board and the interim management was the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Rami.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
So what and maybe giving away my second round question, you can start writing the answer from now, but what was the feedback from those meetings? Basically.
What is the Minister of Finance doing there? But anyway,
yeah.
I digress.
From that we can move into the events of last week Friday, the motion of no confidence towards the Minister of Rami, the ongoing fallout, I would say, of the final report from the Ombudsman's systemic investigation into the garbage contracts. And the other pending investigation that we then received news has been put on hold, so to speak, due to what for me is a very surprising state of affairs and development. Emmanuel, if you would like to maybe start off on that.
No, I know you're talking about the Vineyard Heights in terms of the systemic investigation on the Vineyard Heights, where we have received information that the Ombudsman has terminated the investigation simply because the Minister of Rami, and this is the thing that I try to tell everyone when I go on my program on Tuesday night, all the apologies and I'm sorry and things could be done different and contrition. And the contrition and to show this sort of empathy for people. But it's being told to us that the Minister of Rami is in the process of taking the 45 applicants of the Vineyard Heights to court. Take them to court.
Actually, I'll be even more clear on it. He already summoned them. You see, when it comes to the National Ordinance of Ombudsman in Article 17, it basically says in Section 1, Section 1 sub C, that the Ombudsman is not authorized to continue an investigation as per Article 15, which is the systemic investigation, if there is an investigation or if it has gone to court. And it says, burgerlijke rechtelijke, strafrechtelijke procedure loopt. So that means that if it can be a government case, it can be a civil case, or it can be a criminal case. But in all of those cases, when it is brought to court, the ombudsman, in this case, loses the authority for that time being.
Even if it was started already, so if it was
Yes.
started, she has to stop it.
Yes, so even if as I said, the procedure law, it would have to be stopped. Now, my question is, looking at this from a legal perspective, why now? Why now? I think personally that the minister or whoever is advising him legally finally got around to read the launch report and the ombudsman and decided, you know what, the best thing to do for me, after I received emotional disapproval from Parliament last November, in which they told me in that motion, the motion of curing, to fix the situation with the former applicants, to call them all in within a specific time frame, to let them all come and present their case. He decided that after being instructed that from Parliament, that now in August, the best thing to do would be to summon that same group to sue them, and therefore to stop the investigation. I have the summons of one of the persons. Really? And it says it was given to him on the 3rd of August, I believe. Is bepaald that they would have to come to court on the 20th of September 2022. That's on a Tuesday, and the case will be about Vineyard Heights. I don't know what the intention is of the minister when it comes to this case, but I do know what the intention of to present the case, and that was to stop the systemic investigation. Why? Because there was strong indication, and my MPs can back me up on this. We've all heard it, that this report would have been worse than the garbage collection.
This is one of the biggest issues coming out of that, right? This understanding that decisions, even if not illegal, should be ethical. That was my view, and the court said the same thing too. I can't remember how much it was originally, 45 people? Yeah, 45 persons had a legitimate expectation. So even if they didn't have the bracelet in their hand or whatever, they had an expectation on a promise that this was theirs. We know that some of them went to the cadastre and paid. Have respect for our people, all our people, not only yours. Have respect for all of our people and treat them in such a manner that says, you know what, even if I want to do something else, I will bring you into the fold, communicate with you, and then maybe we move ahead together in a respectful manner. And that was my biggest issue. And that was really, to me, when the winds changed for many of us in the coalition, because we had to stand up on those principles, kind of turn our eyes to them.
And the question, MP Duncan, would be, and I think MP Peterson alluded to it, somebody explain me how you taking the applicants to court for holding on to
what the
a
government
decision that
promised
the
to them.
government made.
That's my
Listen,
that's why we don't
it's funny because there are members of this coalition that in the past have accused the Dutch of having Gestapo tactics, etc. But this is quite literally Gestapo tactics. So a government is technically, right now, you are at war with your citizens.
Exactly. So you,
whether it's the press,
like MP Duncan said,
etc.
MP Duncan said, that whatever it is they have, and we know what a court case said, and you have a verdict.
There is a verdict on the 28th of January this year.
You, the government, taking your citizens that have some, whether it's the draft, the slide,
that the government gave to them. The government gave it to them. The government told them, look, listen, the infrastructure is not in, this is not done. However, you go make the payments here, do this, and we will continue in the near future when we can get this done. I remember the minister saying, oh no, if you don't have a deed, you don't own it. A promise don't mean you own it. But who gave them that promise?
Yep.
Who told them to do those things?
A promise has consequences. A promise, when you're a minister, it has consequences. And a lot of people don't understand this. You as a minister, you can make a lot of statements, but the civilian that you're speaking to, they can be, as Duncan said, te goede trouw. I was entitled to trust you within when it comes to your statement as a civilian. Why? Because you are the decision maker. You are the one who is authorized to give me that land. So if you give me a piece of paper that tells me you are going to receive this land after you go to Cadastre and pay for it, whether or not government drops or whatever, and by the end of the day you don't get your decree, that happening creates something that has rechtsvervolging, as we call it, and whether or not it's you getting the land or not, or the government having to owe you damages when it comes to that, whatever it is, you have a right, and the government cannot just brush you to the side.
And you know, and my first reaction was the minute I saw and heard about this was like, you know, let's call the minister, let him give the answers to the questions that we are asking with respect to this particular initiative that he made now, taking the applicants to court. But then, I mean, we go to Parliament, we go see, just like we're seeing it, you know, in all of the different instances, but government is not going to give us the kind of answers that would say.
And I'm so happy that's the part that you dive into, because now it comes to the advice. It comes to the advice with the solid waste.
Yes, exactly.
And I have been
because that was the topic.
I have been requesting the advice. I've been requesting the information. And you see, the good thing, we don't have an overhead camera so people can see. And then you have the Prime Minister said that they receive advice from Jesus and Way as to something, you know, confidential. But this is a public document. This is a public bid. This is taxpayers' money that went into this. So what you see here, this one that you see here is what we received from the government. What we received from the government, this one. And that's what I made mention on the floor of Parliament yesterday. So the government sent this. But I wanted to show the people of St. Martin what the government sent to members of Parliament. So we are questioning the advice. We are asking for all the supporting documents that goes with the advice.
The whole report pertains to this advice.
Right. The evaluation sheet,
everything.
The committee notices, everything that goes with it. What we receive from government is this, 17 pages. But look at the 17 pages. Everything is redacted. So everything is redacted. So here you have the 17 pages. One of the 17 pages. So you see all of these little lines. All of these little lines redacted. When you turn to the next page,
Look at
this one.
But we must be able to form an opinion based on.
We must be able to
bring it back to the people.
To bring it back to the people. Redacted, everything when you look at the page.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's important because I know people can't really see the document that well, but just to note that what is covered up are the amounts.
The amounts
of your money.
So you turn to the other page. This is what we get from the government.
And you know, and the thing is, on that
what are you supposed to do with that?
On that point, I can understand if the argument, okay, not that I would agree, but I can understand the argument, okay, leave out the person's names.
Yes.
I mean, that would make more sense than leaving the names and take out the amount.
You see,
But it's already a document.
We know the problem is, and Wescot, that we in St. Martin, we have a very wrong impression of what is confidential and what not.
I agree.
Confidentiality is something that we like to throw out. Oh, it's confidential. Oh, it's internal documents. No. When it comes to government, like Duncan very well knows, we have a wet LOB.
Right.
Open by head from the student. The whole of government is based on that principle that everything is public.
Yeah.
So all of these documents is public. So when it comes to these numbers, there is nothing confidential on the prices.
Unless they can, just like the other law that we were talking about earlier, unless they have specific reason to say why this can be done.
No, but that's what I wanted to get at. The only reason that these numbers can be confidential is if there is a belong to defend that weighs more towards, so when you compare it to our belong as a people to actually see these numbers.
Yeah.
That's it. So what does government have, what interest does government specifically have to hold these numbers private from Parliament? There is none. There cannot be any because they're numbers. They're taxpayers' money. Budget right. We approve these numbers.
Yeah. So,
as per the budget. So just
I want to just for the record, and like and even Mellissa Gumbs made mention that many people can't see it, but just for the record, I want them to know that this is the div number for this document. And the div number is 8948.
It's in the system.
It's in the system.
You can go now.
You can go
to
now
div
to
in
div.
government, and whoever's sitting behind the desk, if they can pull this document up, this whole document will pull up.
Okay? So
Speaking
again,
from experience.
so now this is the one that the government sent to us on 17 pages, redacted. What the government didn't know is that we already had the whole advice that is not redacted. And this is the same div number, 8948. Same one. And in the government's response, it is 17 pages. In the response of the real advice, it's over 30 pages.
And MP Duncan's been whispering a point to you.
The sensitivity is normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have here. Priority is high. Sensitivity is normal. So if the sensitivity is normal, why you can redact everything?
And leave out
Right.
certain pages from the document.
And leave out certain pages
Especially
from the
the
document.
part from the government.
Especially the part
Because
from the
that's
governor.
where it gets very,
And that's the
very
part that they don't
close.
mention. They don't talk that part from the governor. They don't mention the
But
part
we've been asking
from the governor.
since
And we
day
have been
one.
asking
What
from
does the governor think about it? What was his
Yeah.
opinion on the report?
Exactly.
Did they have anything to say before he signed the advice? We kept asking this in and out of the meeting, in and out, no answer. And they had the indication from day one.
And I wanted to make not a clarification, but a correction, because the people of Somalia was lied to by a member of parliament when he got up on the floor of parliament and put on the screen the parcel, the parcel that Aviana cleanup that they won, and
That
made
was the member
mention.
from the UP faction, I remember.
No, it is the member of parliament Yolanda Bryson that made that statement. And I want to say to the people of St. Martin, it was a blatant lie. Blatant. Because you see, and this is the reason why, again, we are asking for all of these supporting documents. All of these are the documents. These are all the documents from the evaluation committee. That is not part of it, that they refuse to send to us. But when you look at the parcel that was won by Aviana, it is parcel 5. This is what was making mention of. And in parcel 5, when you go down on the evaluation sheet, there's an X. There's an X. And there's an X by number 10 in terms of the item. And what does it say? It says, proof that the owner of the sole proprietor is not bankrupt and that it is not experiencing liquidity or cash flow problems as issued on St. Martin.
So not a bank statement.
So not a bank statement. But when the member of parliament got up on the floor of parliament and he put up parcel 5, he said, look, there is no bank statement missing. There is no bank statement. The bank statement that he is talking about was in parcel 2 from the same Aviana that they did not win the bid for. So confusing the people of St. Martin.
Yeah.
But what, you see, this is what happens, and this is how the politics works sometimes, because he was the last speaker.
Yep.
So because of him being the last speaker, you can bring this over. This is parcel 2. And in parcel 2, you see the X. And what does the X say? A bank statement indicating a financial capacity of the company. Parcel 2. But Aviana did not win parcel 2. The parcel that they won was parcel 5.
And I think it's good
Go
to
ahead.
note as well on the general list, those same documents on the evaluation. So you had sort of a master list of all the companies that bid. And on the master list for parcel 5, that same company had DQ for disqualified.
Printed.
Printed. It wasn't written.
It wasn't
It was
written.
no white out.
It says DQ, disqualified.
Disqualified.
And I remember member of parliament and Wescot saying, but then sort of with the same sort of favoritism be given to Leonard Enterprise. But then if you take the other bidders such as Vision, they won their parcel with no X, nothing, but they're out.
But MP,
Yeah.
my reason for in this discussion mentioning Leonard Enterprises was because the questions that I asked the Ombudsman Act,
yes.
in terms of, qualifying and not qualifying.
Mhm.
And they mentioned specifically, the Ombudsman in her report mentions, so why didn't you look at Leonard Enterprises from the perspective of them having the machineries, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The Ombudsman, and that's what I base my questions on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna look to the.
Sorry,
go ahead.
this is the one that I was made a mention of. So again, with the same documents that says qualified and disqualified. If you go down and you look at VisionWorks, VisionWorks, one day in Paso, there was no disqualified. You see the line, no disqualification, nothing whatsoever in VisionWorks. But they were kicked out. They were out. But when you look at the other Pasos from Aviana, even in Paso 2, you see disqualified. Even in Paso 5, you see disqualified. And those are the questions we are asking.
And I'm looking for the right word to explain how we believe that the government is actually insulting the intelligence of most members of parliament, I can safely say. Most members of parliament. Why do I say this? The same document that MP Emmanuel referred to that we received, so the partial document, has a listing of what documents should have been with this advice. So they sent us this. They sent us the advice that states, you got the draft contracts, the draft lumps displayed, the correspondence email from Ministry of Finance. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 additional pieces of document that should have been with it. Interesting in those, and we did not receive them. We did not receive all of them from the government. We have them, did not receive them from the government. But interesting is a missing memo that states correspondence email dated Friday, February the 5th, 2021 from Department Head Vromi Infrastructure concerning requalifying of disqualified contractors based on the discrepancy of the license. We didn't get it, but it said it's an annex document to.
So by days, can we as members of parliament at this moment, as per the wet LOB, the Landsverordening Openbaarheid van Bestuur, request that specific document from the Ministry of Vromi, please? Thank you. That's a public statement.
But the thing about it, I think for me, it should go much further. I want an investigation in this whole tendering process. Because if we can't get the documents who are the people's representative, then probably the prosecutor's office can get all the documents too as well. Because if the minister can say, look, listen, I'm going to summon you individuals to court, and the ombudsman can't continue with her job, then I don't believe that the role of the minister supersedes the role of the prosecutor's office in asking for the information, asking for all the documentation pertaining to this. So it is simple for me. I think an investigation should be done.
But you see, pertaining to that specific topic there, when you said Emmanuel, something that was very troublesome to me last week, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but allegedly the minister started his own investigation, right? When it comes to this department and the leaking of documents, etc. So I understood that the minister himself walked down and started to question individuals from within his own ministry, from within this department. So I'm saying, if the ministry is so keen on doing an investigation, then do one across the board. Or actually, better yet, let the proper authorities do it. Because at no point in time does any minister have any right to go and question any civil servant. That's why you have the responsibility of department heads towards the minister. So it's going crazy.
The minister said he never was in the room, he never had the key, he never saw the documents. So then if that is the case, how it is that the minister could have come to parliament, stand up on the floor of parliament, look at these documents and say, these don't seem to be legitimate, something here seems to be doctored, something here seems to be. But if you have never seen them before, how do you know that? True. How do you know that, minister? Because he threw the department head under the bus. He said the only individual that had the key was a department head. That is Sherman George.
There's a reason why he left.
Okay? And it's the reason why he left. It's the reason why the financial controller,
who also made it, she put her notes on this advice. And what did she say? Please note that I have not reviewed the tender final evaluation results nor the financial data resulting from the source documentation of the tender evaluation procedure, as this was executed by the technical committee. She was not part of it. She was the first one to leave. So to even put her name on it, because she was financial controller, she did not basically have a choice. But she made it clear in the advice. Now I'm saying, guys, this is a multi-million-dollar advice. This is taxpayers' money. If there's any advice that we have to do our due diligence, that we have to be extra careful, that we have to double check, triple check before we give out millions of dollars of government money, it's this. But what do we say? Oh, well, if the financial controller did, it's okay, man. We just go ahead with it. This is mediocre executive decision making. It cannot be tolerated. It's crazy.
It's disturbing to me because I was a civil servant for 10 years. I worked in
I've never seen anything with financial consequences this
to me. And what we see, and like MP said, civil servants are being thrown under the bus constantly. I know that I'm going to admit that it is difficult to come in and say if you want to change your ministry. But then you come in with a change plan. If you're capable, if you're really qualified, you would be coming in with a change management plan because you're saying, hey, listen, this is the old way, but this is the new way now, and we are going to get there together. But what we see, and I've never seen this before, 10 years as a civil servants being thrown under the bus and leaving the organization like what's happening now. Yeah. To me, that's disturbing.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. You know, you listen to the meeting that happened on Friday, you listen to the motivation in terms of the motion of no confidence. And what came out from individuals is that the ombudsman, you're a liar. You're the one who's lying, not the minister. The minister's not the one responsible for these things. He came and he met those things there. But the minister stood on the floor of Parliament and he said, I have never seen these documents. These documents, I don't know what they're all about. There was only one individual that had the key for the room for these documents. But the minister stood up on the floor of Parliament. He looked at the document and he said, but this seemed to be tampered with. This don't seem to be authentic. This seemed to be altered. Minister, which one it is? Yeah. You never seen the documents before?
Oh, you know what's
then
authentic and what is not.
What is authentic from what is not authentic? How do you know? And those are the lies and the misrepresentation that we are talking about, and me in particular. And when I told the other MPs, I say, we as MPs simply can't just sit back, throw in the towel, and leave the narrative come out as if the ombudsman is the one who's lying. The ombudsman is the one that make up a story. The ombudsman is the one who have fabricated everything. If that is the case, how is it that we didn't know what all the governors said? How is it? The governor himself is skeptical with this whole tendering. The governor himself.
I mean, it begs the question too, because at the end of the day, there was signature given, but I think what you said there is important about the framing of the ombudsman as being incorrect. Look, as we mentioned, the ombudsman is reporting with the data that they have been given. That office gets their data from government. They put that excerpt from the law in the postscript to the final report. And I think it's important that people realize that these entities exist for a reason. To say that members of parliament were making a ruckus about nothing, which is what it has been made to look like by the coalition, this is our job. If we're not to take reports from the High Council of State and use them to hold government accountable, which yes, will sometimes include a motion of no confidence or a motion of disapproval, because those are the tools available to us to hold government accountable, then why are they there? We should just take the ombudsman budget and maybe send them on a long vacation.
If a member was to say, I don't care what you guys say, I don't care about the laws that exist for our high councils of state, I don't agree with them being part of the structure, that would be that member. But you can't use them to your convenience.
Which is what we see, because when the executive table law was passed by the previous ombudsman's office, it was perfectly fine. And that was respected by the government then. But this government now is
But not only that, you had a member of parliament up to yesterday saying, but the council advised.
Yes, they didn't say
the council advised. And the members of parliament always talking about these high council of state.
The same council of advice
But look, the council
basically
advice.
said that one of those laws that was presented by the good MP was the process had to be stopped.
Okay.
So we need to stop picking and choosing.
Exactly.
Either
We can't do
we
that.
with the High Council of State and me as MP Peterson, I most of the time do agree with what the opinion is of our High Council of State, and I understand as an MP you have to scrutinize everything, but we place those important bodies in the law so that when they speak, we act.
Yes.
They don't have to speak so that we have to go question them.
And
when
you
they
know,
speak.
for
It
me,
doesn't work like that.
the ombudsman
It doesn't work like that.
is sort of a independent investigative
Yeah.
arm for investigations that we may not have the tools or the maneuverability to conduct ourselves. So when they come back
We
with
do
an
not.
investigation,
We do not.
Exactly.
The trias politica, the ombudsman is basically the remedy for the trias politica, separating us as MPs from going into that government building and finding information for ourselves. It needs to be separated. The powers need to be separated. The ombudsman is the bridge between, you have a problem, parliament, with government. Based off of that, I will do an objective investigation based on the facts, present that to you, and you, as the ones who government is held accountable to, will have to act, whether you decide as a body or not. That's the intention of the law, and what the MPs did in that room, basically making it seem as if it is just a report that is put in the law by national ordinance. It is completely disrespectful to not only the High Council of State, but to us as a legislative body of St. Martin as well.
But it's a hypocrisy. Sorry, it's a hypocrisy because here you have the situation yesterday. So because the Council of Advice, the High Council, didn't make mention of anything, it is good for us to pass the law that the Prime Minister said is going to legitimize the payments. So it is good then. So that High Council of State information is good for something that was done illegally.
Yeah.
Now here you have the systemic investigation of the Ombudsman presenting it to Parliament saying, these are my findings. And in my findings, it was not one, transparent, nor was it fair. What do you get? Oh no, the Ombudsman is lying.
I need to see the other side of the facts.
I need to see the other side of the
What other
facts.
side?
What other side?
What other side?
One of the powerful things about the ombudsman is that she is literally the voice for the people.
Yes.
We in here, we just get our constituents out to us and so forth. But
She
then
acts based off of
and she
people, not us.
investigates, and then she makes recommendations. Government, I am not your enemy, I am here to support you. Listen, based on the investigation, you can do this differently.
exactly.
Use her
Usually
as support, as an ally. But
it's just a continuation. You look at it like a domino effect. You disregard the Corporate Governance Council, which yes, is an advisory council. They've disregarded SARE reports. The disregard for the Ombudsman, General Auditor. I mean, it's a continuing kind of.
MP Gumbs, a coalition member took the budget of the integrity chamber that the government presented and slashed it considerably with approximately 700,000. The integrity chamber raised the alarm in terms of how they will be able to execute their responsibilities. I asked questions regarding that. What does that mean for them? Because the next thing is when the integrity chamber, which in my opinion, it really hasn't started full-fledgedly yet, they start to decide, well, that's something I think I'm going to take up and look at and investigate. What is going to happen then?
Yeah.
We then them too, we're going to throw under the bus while it is an institution that we created as part of the hierarchy of checks and balances.
Yeah.
But
Emmanuel, yes.
No, I just wanted to read the memo. Yeah, I don't know if you want to read it, but I want to read the memo that says from the Minister of Finance to on appeals, the SG of Finance, and it says here, dear Minister, a tender took place on February the 2nd, 2021 by the Ministry of Money to enable the completion of the solid waste collection. The tender procedure revealed that the budgeted amount should be increased to cover these costs. The Minister of Finance decided to incorporate an additional 2 million guilders to the aforementioned budget post of 2021 and for the next 4 years. Our budget department incorporated this increase in the draft budget of 2021 budget and in the multi-annual projections. Trust to have informed you sufficiently. And now I'm saying to myself, you know, and here's where it gets a little bit more technical, because what they have done is increase the budget of garbage collection even higher than what the government prices were in the past for collecting less in different parcels. It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. And this is the reason why we are saying, give us all the information. Give us all the documentation. But you see, this is what the government have been hiding. This is what the government have been secret about. And then what you get is that the memo part I was reading with our Minister of Finance.
Where they're upping the budget?
Where they're upping the budget.
My question on that side note, Emmanuel, is based on the meeting that we had yesterday when it comes to the vacation pay, where the budget amendment can only be done through Parliament or as per Article 50.
Right.
Was because I have not seen this come to Parliament at all. But this is a change in the budget. This is a bigger change than what they were proposing yesterday. So I would really want to know when they decided to add this 2 million guilders to the garbage contract,
In fact,
when they came to us.
what you're realizing from not only the Secretary General's memo, but also the governor's comments, is that we didn't even have a budget period for 2021.
We didn't have a budget
for 2021. And so then you're actually making a decision to supplement the budget that wasn't even there, when you had to use as the basis for your financial management in the absence of the budget of the previous year.
Yeah.
But this was just kind of incorporated, which part of the course. We do have some questions on the live. Are there any implications and or consequences for misleading the governor's office if proven to be true concerning information for the contracts for garbage collection? Now, the governor expressed his misgivings, his concerns, but at the end of the day, ultimately signed off so that the collection could start. So if, I don't know, in Wescot or so, first time here, so I'm not sure how that,
Well, you see, the one to determine whether that is or was the case in terms of misleading would be the governor's office, and I'm sticking to the office, kind of leaving the governor out of it. And that hasn't happened. As many of you indicated. The governor's office, the governor's cabinet indicated some misgivings with the way that they receive, but at the end of the day, these national decrees have been signed off, including by the governor, making them legitimate national decrees. Of course, all of that was before the ombudsman came out with their findings, in which they also refer to some issues which now this is a little on thin ice here, and the only one who could determine, oh my God, I didn't get that. I didn't get that impression when these decisions were signed off to would be the governor's cabinet itself, if anything was to happen, it would have to happen by the one who would feel that he was misled. Yeah.
Right. Not so much a question, but more a statement on the prosecutor's office, the report that they published in regarding the ransomware attack on GEBE. But I know that we are not, those are investigation details that we ourselves will not receive. But now, if you consider the time going on, and I think the report that has since leaked from the original company that was addressing the ransomware attack for GEBE, in it you can see that there are some elements where I can understand why they didn't cooperate with the investigation. So now it's curious to me, what then is the OM going to do moving forward with that? Because again, as I have tried to make it emphatically clear to people, this was a crime committed against essentially an entire country. There are consequences from these things, and they say that there's 24-hour monitoring going on, but we don't know how that relationship is going to go. So what happens if that lapses out again? What occurs then? And I think for me, we don't have those details to answer the individual who asked, but it would be interesting to see how the OMO is now moving forward.
Yeah, indeed.
Let's see the others. Will there be another no confidence motion after the Council of State? Well, or report on Vineyard Heights, but we're not going to. Well, I mean, the Ombudsman did say she would forward her findings, but it's not going to be a complete report.
Yeah.
That investigation, as we mentioned earlier, to the commenter, has been suspended because of the legal action that the minister has taken then against the applicants to Vineyard Heights.
Yeah.
So,
I encourage the applicants to actually then request that information that Ombudsman currently has to add that.
yeah, and I don't know if there was a timeline provided as to when we would be getting those findings, but perhaps a question for the chair lady once the new
And knowing that this process has clearly stated, we have seen that, I think it would behoove us as members of parliament to call the minister to parliament to give
And ask
account
him
of
about-
what
Because
this
remember-
action is all about.
Because this reflects on the motion that all of us here,
Exactly. Signed as well.
we signed that motion as well. So in following up to that motion, I think that we should follow up on this specific topic as well. I don't think that it's fair to the applicants, the original applicants, to not hear anything from us as their representatives because the minister took them to court. To my opinion, to my personal opinion, it's kind of bullying, to be honest. And that's what we're here for. So
I want to say that right now, in this time, 2022, all of us here across party lines are saying this is what is the bare minimum. That government is transparent. This thing about sweeping stuff under the rug or even lying to parliament is unacceptable. Accountable. If you do something wrong, you have to be held accountable for it.
Yeah.
You are not running like McDonald's. This is the country. This our children, their children. It is serious.
Yeah.
It is very, very serious. And you have to be held accountable. And if something is wrong, respond to it.
Yeah.
Okay, if something that the attack took place in March, respond right away.
exactly.
Not a crisis team 4 months later. That is unacceptable. So I do not want people to look at this, which is natural, right? That it's a personal thing. That we want to bring down. No. Our country deserves better.
It comes across the board, Duncan, because the sensitive but very important subject when it comes to the Catholic school boys is the exact same thing. An incident happened from March to April, and only now in August to September we got that addressed. And in this case, it would be the Minister of Education. At this point, I don't care, people. We need to address these things. Accountability goes a long way, and it's not only in press briefings that you give it. When something happens, as a minister, as the one who is responsible for your ministry as a whole, you need to have at least an assertive opinion to give the public the trust in you that you can actually, lead the country. And at that point, that's completely lacking from almost every ministry.
It's funny that you made mention earlier that you said that it's looking as if we want to bring down and we want to do this. Then let's go back a year or a year before that. And I believe Member of Parliament Peterson made mention of it. Minister Miklos was sent home because he had an accident.
They forced him behind the scenes to resign. His own council of ministers. Not one questionable decision from Minister Peterson, not one systemic investigation. All of the ombudsman's requests we adhered to when he was minister, not one piece of land given to any question, not one permit, not one garbage, nothing. All he did was go out with a current member of the coalition, 2 of them actually, of the new coalition. He was out with them that night. I know that for a fact. He was out with them, and then they let him drive home in his minister car, while he had to drop off someone that was with them. That's why he was all the way to cul-de-sac and not all the way up to some guy where he lives. So we can go into the personal side of it. But at the end of the day, that was a threshold for him to be forced to resign.
In comparison,
So compare that 2% to this 200% that we have ongoing, go over and over and over again. The hypocrisy it's clear, people. It's clear.
And I think it's unfortunate that we're at a point where when you point out facts and logic that you're
You're
looked
the
at
liar.
as bullying.
Yeah.
You're the liar.
You're the the
Fact checking.
and
I
that's
would say
really
fact checking.
exactly, and that's really not what it is. And I
Or
think
they're envious of you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have had members of parliament come up and support ministers in their wrongdoing with a statement that they're envious of you.
Yes.
You inherit this and they're jealous of you,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you continue.
But
You
what
see-
about that we're not politically, we're not judge and jury, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
We don't hold.
Guys, you guys have it good.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys have it good. I got, when someone came at me personally for a case that I helped them solve 2 years ago. So it shows a lot.
in any event, as we move into a new parliamentary year, I think it's critical to continue this pressure. That is what we are here for. I know that there's a lot of pushback always about bringing initiative, this initiative, and that is indeed part of our job. But for me, especially if we consider the times that we're moving through, the most critical part of the job with the longest sitting government is oversight.
Exactly.
Is oversight. And I think that, conducting that oversight using the tools given to us, ombudsman reports, Raeyhon A reports, etc., that is what has to continue.
And I can't help but add to that point, which is something I constantly say, and that is that, yes, we have the right to initiative to draft laws. However, the principle based on which all of this happens is that you are in sync with the government because the government has to ratify the law. Today, we don't have a timeshare ordinance. Today, the change to the civil code, making it possible for shorter periods to give short-term contracts, paternity leave, extended maternity leave, is still waiting on the government's not only ratification, but they need to issue its implementation. We're still waiting on that. Plastic bag ban in a similar situation. First thing, when you submit an initiative draft law, the Council of Advice asks, is this really necessary to be in a law? One, where does it fit in the government's vision for the country?
But that's what it's about.
And that's what it's about.
The rest of initiative does not only entail we as MPs bring new laws, it basically gives us the right to add to a law that is already presented. That is what the intention of the legislator was, because we are 15 individuals as per Article 44 of the Constitution. We do not have a staff, we don't have a legal affairs department. So the law cannot have its intention that we are going to sit here in our capacity to write. It doesn't work like that. That's a misconception that keeps being portrayed to the people of St. Martin. But we, as the legislator, that only means that we approve the law. That means that the government, with its entirety of this body, cannot pass a law without going through us. That is our role. That is our role of oversight towards the government. Not that we have to sit in their chair and bring. Otherwise, we would have had to be an executive branch.
Yes, correct.
And I ask that people also, try to see through the lines, the gimmicky lines of trying to act and beat our chests with regards to, for example, there was a couple comments made regarding my previous employer, UTS, where I'm like, that could have been resolved very quickly. However,
and again,
find a shortcut to shine.
And I want to state, because that matter was mentioned, and because again, it had to do with former Minister of Finance Perry Halings, but the story behind how the UTS came out to be in a proposed initiative draft law is also very interesting. And I just would give that the budget was pulled back by the Council of Ministers. Yeah, but it was in the budget, and
it was basically taken and copied, right? That's what happened, right?
Copy everything.
I mean, I wasn't in the government then, so I can just say it. That's what I heard.
I smile every time I hear that reference. But anyway,
but
if that makes one happy, then so am I.
If anyone has any final closing statements, closing remarks, pending remarks.
My last advice to the public is, again, I understand that we bombard you guys with a lot of documents at some times, but we as MPs, we actually take it as we go. These are documents that come to us timely, and we try to see how to bring that forward to the public as well, given what our authority is. But I encourage the public to read what's been being put online, read everything that leaks, read everything, and you will see for yourself. Like we don't have to sit here as a group to convince you of what is going on. Like I think that at some point the people of St. Martin are going to wake up. We're not dumb, you understand, and we're not as gullible as we were 10 years ago. So the government is going to have to come way more correct than they are coming right now in order to fool us again. So that's what I want to.
And for me, again, it's coming back to what MPS got started out in the beginning. Do we have a legitimate government? Because again, as it is, with the coalition right now, it is only 7 seats. And as long as we doesn't see that coalition agreement or an official coalition agreement with all signatures that is represented in a majority that is government, then we have an illegitimate government in a minority.
Wescot, any?
No, I think,
Yeah, that's just good.
I want to just remind the people that they are the ones with the power. At the end of the day, you're the ones with the power. Article 24 of the Constitution says you can submit petitions to all authorities. If you have an issue, you have the right to ask government to fix that issue. If government hasn't responded, you can come to Parliament, you can go to the Ombudsman. Please do not let anyone take your power away from you. And we are here to represent you, and that's what it's about. That's what we are here for. And I'm looking forward to a new parliamentary year.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to all for tuning in. Thank you to Romiko for being here at 721 News and joining us today. And yes, next week the new parliamentary year begins, and we will see what it brings for us and for the country. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, guys. Bye.